biggest question I get from labels all the time is, how do you use content to drive streams? If you have 1 million followers and like 10,000 streams per month, it's not converting. You're not going to grow because the platform is telling you, hey, this is how we work, try and do this. But once you've got that audience, keep them.
Great, Katie.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us on the Find Your Frequency podcast. Really excited about this because came across you presenting at Home, which is a great space actually for the music tech community in particular. And I think you actually won.
I did.
The competition.
Yeah, it was for South by Southwest. I'm beaming as I'm talking about it. 4 of us, 4 judges from the industry, from labels, from some of the bigger like VC companies. And they will just like pitch your business in 3 minutes. And you know how hard that is to do. But yeah, I went up there, I did it, and I was able to beat the competition. They had 400,000 euros in mock investment to assign, and I won about 340,000 out of that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's just a testament to how much I believe in the music industry, how much I believe in the creative industry. And yeah, I'm happy to share my journey because that shaped that win.
Wow.
South by Southwest. Yeah.
I mean, congrats. It's a shame that wasn't real money, but I'm sure the real money will be next.
It'll be coming soon, but it's a really good signal to the industry that like this is what we need. You know, I have my company Halo and Echo, which I'll talk about in a second, but HypeMuse, this is what we need. We need this platform that's going to make it easier to tell our story as a label or as a creative agency or brand.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I mean, well done, first of all.
Thank you.
Super impressive. Thanks. And the feedback, you know, some of our investors were on the judging panel, and the feedback that I received from them about it was also amazing.
Thank you.
You know, they thought you were brilliant. So could you share a little bit about what you're doing with Halo and Echo and also HypeMuse, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Halo and Echo essentially is a creative tech company. I do 2 things. The first one is consulting. As a consultant, so I'll go in and I'll work with brands and labels and creative agencies. The second thing with HypeMuse is it's more of a B2B platform. It acts as an AI creative director. So if you're a label or if you're an artist that has a label or your creative agency or creative team in a brand, you upload your social video, social ad, UGC, and it will analyze the video to say, okay, this is where people are dropping in attention, and this is how you can change it from a creative perspective compared to kind of doing guesswork, or if you're an artist, just having no idea what you need to do because you're focusing on your music. You don't want to focus on like making videos and coming up with ideas. So that was built off my YouTube and Google experience and my experience in the industry over 15 years. That's what we're doing. We're trying to change the industry and make it easier to tell your story.
I love that. I love it for a number of reasons. One is Sam, who's sat over there, who's our head of growth. He says now around the targeting and or the importance of the creative with regards to the targeting as well from an advertising perspective. Yeah. And actually that does a lot of the work for you. Yeah. And so, you know, in terms of the importance of that creative and reaching the right audience, obviously that's growing. Yeah. And then also, small anecdote is when I pitched on Dragon's Den a few years ago, and Stephen Bartlett said, no, you shouldn't be thinking about amplifying how you amplify music and content. You should be thinking about how you create it more effectively. Yeah. And so obviously you're taking, I guess, the feedback that I had from Stephen Bartlett, plus also now the trend in the importance of the creative finding audiences and building something for that. Yeah. How's it been since you launched it? I guess there's a huge appetite for that, right?
There's a huge appetite, more than I expected, actually. I think when it comes down to like the creative, there's so many surveys, there's so many studies, but it's like, we know that you have to do that. How? Like, how can you do it as a label? How can you do it as an artist? How can you do it as a creative agency? But how it's going is pretty good. Like, I just finished off a project with an enterprise client. And they were asking the same questions a small label would be asking. So there is that appetite. Building it and trying to make sure that I can target one area of this problem is the biggest issue because it's the issue is amplified by AI. Like everyone's using AI, they're producing content, it looks great, but then how do you stand out? So we're constantly changing and switching it up. But yeah, it's going well so far.
And can I ask, what are the most What are the questions that those labels are asking? Like what are the things that people are getting wrong when it comes to content creation? Just thinking about our audience here, independent artists, managers, labels, they want to know what they should be doing better.
Yeah.
So without giving away everything, because obviously,
we don't have time. Like, there's so much. There's so much.
Are there some key things that you would recommend artists and content creators are looking at to help them cut through a little better?
Yeah, it's the same kind of advice I'd give anyone, whether it's a brand or creative agency, but you tailor it per the audience. The first thing that I would say is you need to know your why. You need to know why you're doing it. So the biggest issue or the biggest question I get from labels all the time is, how do you use content to drive streams? Like, we have music videos, we have this, they're filming a lot of content, but what comes where, why? Because you can build your audience, but if you have 1 million followers and like 10,000 streams per month, it's not converting. So that's one of the biggest questions that we aim to answer. The second thing for artists, like what can they do better, is don't do everything yourself. I'll talk about my journey in a second, but I started off as a music producer in the early days of like YouTube and social, and I was doing everything myself. And they make it sound like you can do everything. Oh, you can distribute your music, you can create content, because we have all these tools. You can't do it all yourself. So I would say find someone, a friend, or find someone online who can edit your videos for you. Take a part of the process that you don't like, so that you can just continue to kind of move it along like a business. It should be like, the process should be like a supply chain, but you should know your why. You should know your story. You should know your ethos, so that you tell authentic stories, not just what the label wants you to do or whatever. Because people can tell authenticity from a script, and that's what's not converting right now.
Love that. Yeah. And how do you? I want to double click quickly on the. You might have 1 million followers, but 10,000 streams. How are you converting that traffic from your socials over to the DSPs? You talked about knowing your why, which is really important. Are there any practical things around? Your video should be 15 to 30 seconds long. Or, you should be using Instagram over TikTok to drive traffic off platform. Is there anything there that artists can take away?
I mean, they can contact me afterwards if they want some more information. But but like, just to give some tips. What I've seen in the industry is like music videos being chopped up and put on platforms and thinking that that's going to drive streams. I was shocked. I used to work in LA for YouTube Music. And I was shocked. There was this group called Flyana Boss. They had worked so hard on building their organic content strategy. Like, yes, they're signed to a label, but they were creating content, making fun content, running around, singing their songs all the time. And they didn't have a music video yet, and they were driving streams. And that was the first time I was just like, oh my God, you can spend tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands on a music video, it won't convert. They're producing videos with their phone, running around and just uploading it all the time and speaking to their audience, and they're driving streams and they don't have a music video. That's when the light bulb went off, and I was just like, it's about the community. It's about the storytelling. It's about your why, their niche and their quirkiness. They know exactly who they are, and you can tell they know exactly who they are. So that's the first thing that I would say. It's just like, don't rely on music videos and start chopping them up. They still work, but it's like anyone can do that. Like, what's unique about your audience? We're kind of going back to, I wasn't around before MTV, but like when you see these documentaries where people will go to gigs and stuff, like you're going back to the idea of people wanting to feel connected to the audience, not like watching and observing passively. So you've got to think about how you do that.
And you touched on something interesting, and then I'd love to go back to the origin story of sort of you and your journey, because I think it's fascinating. But volume of content, right? And we had this guy called Keith Yopling on the podcast. Brilliant guy. I think was the chief economics officer at Spotify, has written a few books about sort of cutting through and the modern day industry. And he said that's the encouraging more releases and more volume of content is the worst thing that could have happened to the music industry. Right. Especially from an artist perspective, it's the best thing that could happen for those running Spotify.
Exactly.
But the worst thing from an artist perspective, because it sort of takes away a little bit from the art and creates this wash of noise that's hard to cut through. What's your view on that, especially given that you are in the content creation space?
I'm a musician first before I'm a I'm in the content space, and I'm thinking about it with that hat on, because I still do it, but when I was starting off, I was focused on producing. And when I was on YouTube, the worst thing was letting down my audience. Like, I wanted to make sure that I was producing a lot of content. So I agree. I think from a creative standpoint, it's not a tap. You can't just turn it on and then all of a sudden these ideas come. It doesn't match what the business wants. There are ways, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I do think that we need to be realistic. You can go on platforms, AI platforms, make songs, and someone who hasn't like honed their craft can pop. And so you need to be on these platforms telling your story, but you don't have to do it yourself. Like, you can turn the camera around and get your audience to create content. You can get your bandmates to create content as well. Or, you know, you can actually just have a theme that you repeat over and over and over again. So you take the thinking off. When it comes to streams, you can do remixes, you can do collabs, you can do so many things that will foster community and take that pressure off of you. And that's what HypeMuse is trying to figure out. Like, there isn't a one size fits all approach. Someone might take my advice and it won't work for them, so you got to look into it. But that's what the platform's there to do, to help you out with that. Yeah.
That's one thing I think about a little bit, actually, in that you have so many platforms creating somewhat templated experiences for the artist. You know, like, here's your marketing plan, which is similar for each artist, or here's how you should run an ad or pitch to a playlist. Again, templated, because from a tech perspective, you know, you want repeatability. Yeah. But I think you lose the nuance and the power of actually what does move the needle when you have these templated plans that are going out there. So that's definitely something I think about a lot when I see these platforms and see artists struggling to cut through the noise. It's like, okay, how do you create something that has the nuance that's required, but also, you know, scalability, you know, from a founder or a tech perspective, scalability to create a big business. Yeah. I think that's a really hard mix to get. Talk to me about your origin story, because we were talking before, I think Ghanaian roots.
Yes.
And then you had the job that everyone wanted. You know, you worked at Google, YouTube, and I used to be fascinated by the interview experience at Google. So a couple of my friends worked there, and they always used to say they would get questions like, you know, how many aeroplanes are in the sky right now? Or, you know, these sorts of things, or why are manhole covers round? You know, like all this sort of stuff. And then you'd have to get out a whiteboard and do the thing. I mean, is that true? Did that happen for you? And like, talk
not
to me
for
about
me, not
okay,
for me,
okay.
for them, yes, for sure. I kind of, my origin stories, like Ghanaian roots. I'm from West London. I'm very proud to be from West London. Born and raised in West London. And I've always loved music. If you're a millennial, you'll know that I think we had the best, millennials, we had the best era. Like, we had like my mum's generation, which was like more like the Whitney Houstons and the Mariah Careys and stuff, all the way to growing up with like Chris Brown and Rihanna. And we grew up as millennials, and shout out to millennials. We grew up at the time where the industry was changing. Like, I remember when Napster was there, my dad was kind of putting me onto Napster where he shouldn't have, you know, like I saw all these changes, and so there was no way I wasn't going to go into the music industry. But in terms of like the whole YouTube thing, I studied law. I needed to have that foundation. But when I was studying, I was jumping onto MySpace. I was really young. And MySpace was not it. Like, it was so saturated. I needed to cut through the noise. So YouTube was coming up, and I thought, okay, let me just put an instrumental on YouTube. It was one of my rough instrumentals. And I woke up the next morning and it had 5,000 views. Then the next morning it had like 10,000 views. I was like, this is fake. There's no way that. And it kept going and going and going. So I got my start as a producer, but also studying law, because I wanted to understand the business side of the industry, but I am a creative. And what blew it for me, like everything blew up, is I knew what my niche was. I was a female producer from London, working with American artists on the underground scene. And it was like jarring. It was like, oh my God, this is so different. And I would do beat battles. So I'll be in like the room with all these guys, and I'll just be sitting there like, hi, how's everything going? You know, and I would hone my craft because I wanted to stand true to what I was doing. But through that, I started to understand about YouTube. Like, I was like studying the platform. I was like, okay, I want to get that plaque. I want to see how it works. I want to make sure that I can give what my audience wants. So I started to become a marketer through that. I didn't study marketing. I studied the platform. I studied how it was working, geeking out really, and just trying to upskill and trying to be better than my competitors, but the other artists. And through that, I started to then teach nonprofits to how to cut through the noise. I started to teach them how to film. And then I started to do it for companies. And then I was actually headhunted by a recruiter on LinkedIn. And I was just like, do I want to go and work in ads, you know? But then I did it and I was just like, this is the best thing I could ever do, because I learned so much about the business. I learned so much about how brands are thinking about content, and that's where my speciality lies. But also I was working with some of the most amazing people. And because I built that relationship and I did more than I was supposed to in the company, and outside of the company as well, there was an opportunity and I was able to interview for it. And it wasn't like going on the whiteboard and doing all these questions. It was more about, you know, talk to me about the business, talk to me about the industry. And then during the pandemic, because I was working more on creative strategy for ads, I was like, I really, really want to go back into the music industry. Like YouTube Music is there, but it was so competitive. You have all these people applying for these jobs internally and externally, and you can't get it because it's like gold dust. You want to, and I was like, no, I want to go into the music industry. And there was an opportunity, George Floyd had just happened, and there was an opportunity to really diversify how YouTube supported Black voices and also diverse voices as well. So I went for it and I got the job. I actually went through 6 interviews, which you're not supposed to do when you're already in the company. And I got to work with Tuma Bassa, who is working with Leo Cohen, some of the best in the industry. And I had to leave London. I left West London, which was sad to move to LA. And that was an experience, and I was there for 2 years. So that's how to cut a long story short, it really was about me betting on myself and like producing and putting it up on YouTube, studying the platform, but being the best in my industry because I was so passionate about marketing, business, content. And you can see I come from a sporting kind of background, that competitive nature, like I need to be the best. I need to help the people I partner with to make money, to cut through the noise. It's always been in me. So that's what they saw, and it helped their business, and it kind of helped me as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
And I think that is the best bet you can make. I do believe that. The best bet you can make is on yourself.
Absolutely, 100%.
You know, and I think if you're going to invest like time in something, it's about, passion's important too. So if you invest it in something you're passionate about, I think ultimately the rewards will come, and clearly that's the case in your story.
Yeah.
What were the things that you were doing, you think, before you joined YouTube? You know, in that creative ad strategy consultancy that you were working within, that were setting you apart from others, and I guess by proxy were allowing the people you were working with to cut through. Yeah. You know, and also then how did that change over the years following?
Yeah, so definitely before I went into like YouTube and Google, I had my ear to the ground. I rolled my sleeves up. I got dirty. So I was looking at, okay, if I want to make a video, what do I need to do? I did every job, whether it was editing, filming. I was hungry. I wanted to make sure that I knew what I needed to do there. I learned the things I was not interested in, like the I won't say what I'm not interested in, but I just had to grind because I was so curious to learn, how does a big brand cut through the noise? How does an independent artist cut through the noise? I was also looking at, Grime Daily as well and platforms like that, and seeing how they were building their audience. And I'm more of an R&B hip hop kind of person and dance. So Grime Daily wasn't my niche, but I was really interested in how they were tapping into the community. So that's what set me apart, is that I was curious. I asked questions. I modeled myself after people who were successful. I was always learning. I have a thirst for hunger. I don't want to just be here. But also when you're working in a smaller company, you have to do everything. And then you understand how a business works and what the challenges are. And I noticed that when I moved to Google and YouTube, I think what set me apart was I had done that. A lot of people do move to YouTube in the middle of their career, but some people go from school to a big company. And so they lose that kind of nuance of what it means to actually be independent, like roll your sleeves up, understand the process.
Yeah.
Most people will work in big teams where you have an editor, you have a strategist, you have a media marketer. And I had done all those things. So I could see the holistic picture. And then after being in the company, I honed in on my zone of genius and delegate the rest. So that's what helped me, learning all the different parts, getting my hands dirty, but then understanding where I shine and delegating the things that I'm not too great at.
And you mentioned GOM Daily, and there's obviously Link Up, SBTV, P1.
yeah.
There's a few different examples of that. What's interesting is they all appeared at a similar sort of time. They all fostered really strong communities around the content they're creating, and then now they've sort of all somewhat dissipated in different ways. I think they're less sort of culturally relevant now, although still great platforms.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about, or was about them being able to build those strong communities at the time? Was this something that they were touching and pressing on? And do you think that building a community, often there's a timing element, rather than it being something that you built something brilliant? How important is timing to that, do you think?
Timing and also strategy. It's always changing. Like SBTV, I like to say Grime Day. Like if they beat me because of that, I like saying Grime Day.
Yeah.
SBTV is actually the one that I have my eye on for sure, and rest in peace to him. But like SBTV, I think they built it around him. Like he was telling his story. He was there with Richard Branson. And I think it was just such a new thing, because growing up in West London, or just growing up in London in general, the UK, and trying to find artists that look like you're represented you, or even if you're like coming from outside of London and you want to hear a different perspective, it was very difficult because you had a very solid industry and you had gatekeepers who would decide who would break through. You wouldn't have an Adele or Jessie J. You wouldn't have artists like that. And so it was just like democratizing how you would showcase different artists. And it was interesting for me because I remember growing up, and I'm probably going to date myself, there was a show called Dub Plate Drama that I used to watch. And I'm not from South London, so that for me, I was just like, oh my God, like, what? That's going on? I was like, I need to move. But it was like that. It was just like you're democratizing storytelling. You're really showcasing a different side, and that's why it blew up. But then I think people get used to it. They get complacent, and you need to move at the speed of culture, at the precipice of culture. And if you're stuck on one platform, I'm not saying they are, but if you're stuck on one platform and you build on one platform, these are rented platforms. You can't stay on these platforms, and you always have to switch up your strategy. You can't do the same thing all the time. And I think for some, they didn't really switch it up. They didn't really understand the new audience. Maybe some changes happen in the background. I can't speak to those platforms, but that's what I've seen with the clients that I've worked with. They shoot up and then they kind of plateau because they're not changing their strategy. And that's why I built HypeMuse, because it's exhausting to always try and keep up. You need to be moving at the speed of culture, and you can't do that manually. You need to be looking at everything.
Yeah. It's really hard, isn't it? Because you have some success using a specific strategy, and so you become somewhat tied to that. You say, well, it works. Yeah. But actually, like you said, things change, culture changes, people's appetite changes, new products come into the market. New platforms, the way people market changes. So you have to constantly be thinking about, what's next. Yeah. Like, there's things I'm working on now that I think will be powerful in 5 years' time. Yeah. Because I think if we start building towards that, I think it could be, it's an interesting place to be thinking about as well. Yeah. You've gone from kind of the strategy piece as a consultant through to YouTube, Google. Yeah. And now you're doing something on your own. Yeah. How's that transition been from corporate to the startup? And I'll tell you where this is coming from. One is maybe it's not been too bad for you because, or challenging, so I shouldn't say bad. Challenging because you started by getting your hands dirty and were in that space, so you kind of get it. I found that transition really hard. I actually went from startup to corporate and back to startup. Because when I went into corporate, I struggled to adjust to the differences that were there. Very grateful for the experience, without a doubt. But really struggled. How did you find that?
I think I approached it with a mindset of I don't have to choose between the two. I like to do both. So when I went into corporate, it was a struggle for me because when you're a creative, you're just like, oh, I have to be in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I've always lived in West London, so it's always been a trek. So that was a struggle for me for sure. But how I adjusted was I was like, I need to have something for me on the side. I need to have, not even for money, for creativity. Or if I'm doing something by myself, I always need to be tapped in. Like we're talking right now, I'm not going to do this thing by myself. I'm going to partner with people who have, like what you said, you're visionary. You have that mindset of 5 years time, this is what's going to happen. That's what helps me, like the partnership piece. But how it's not easy. It's not easy to transition from being in corporate. But working in corporate wasn't easy either. So nothing is easy. It's just about how do you make it work for you? And I've always had that kind of hybrid mindset. But what has not changed is that partnership piece. No matter what I'm doing, whether I'm doing something on my own or if I'm working in corporate, the thing that's got me further is like partnerships. And I'm Ghanaian, so they always say if you go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I live my life by that principle all the time. So that's how I adjust to things. Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge you face at the moment within HypeMuse? So HypeMuse and Halo and Echo, they're separate entities, right? Or
they're the same. So the HypeMuse has been spun out of Halo and Echo, but Halo and Echo is like the umbrella brand, and HypeMuse is the AI platform, the creative director platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, what's the biggest challenge that you face now as a solo founder?
Yeah, solo founder with a really good advisory board. So I'm lucky in that sense. The issue is personnel. It's about like speed to market is great. It's faster than working in corporate. No red tape. I can keep my ear to the ground. I'm more innovative. And I've been lucky to partner with some really great companies where they are interested, so we can drive revenue. But investment is never off the table. So don't be shy. But I think the issue is that team that I was used to working with internally. You can't beat it. And
internally at YouTube.
At any company.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, because I've been in tech before YouTube. I was working with other tech companies, HuffPost, and other companies like that. You bounce ideas. You get to partner with people who think differently to you. So we talk about diversity, and that's important. But like the diversity of thought, I want to be challenged. I want someone to say, no, that's not going to work because I've seen this thing. So that's the challenge. But I do have a board. I do have people that I can bounce ideas with. But that's why I do two things. I go in and I work on campaigns with brands and creative agencies to keep myself sharp and to have that partnership. And then I also get to build my thing on the side and do that as well. So that's the challenge. But if you're an entrepreneur, you find a solution to that challenge. So yeah.
So the challenge is sort of having those people around you day to day who you can bounce those things around with. And I guess I think the analogy is where you put rocks into the dishwashing machine, they spin out and they come out with something nice and smooth and you come out with the best idea possible.
Yeah.
And so are you building out that team? Is that the ambition? The ambition, I guess, is to raise a bit of capital, maybe scale out the team, build out the tech stack and create this thing that is a scalable content creation, iteration, manipulation machine that allows artists and brands and whatever to cut through. Is that fair?
So we've built the prototype already. I've been able to partner with the enterprise brand, but the focus is really about like how do we take it from where we are right now to moving forward. So I know a lot of businesses will build for scale, and that's what we do. But we're building in partnership with B2B brands, so mid-tier brands and enterprise brands, and their agencies and their creative teams, so that they can scale out their content. So we're working with fewer people with the tool, and then we hope to make it available to more people. But yeah, the vision is to make sure that I'm working in the UK. How do we expand to the USA? How do we work with these teams? How do we build a culture where people test their creative and not in a clinical way, not just looking at data or where the video drops, but the storytelling, the culture. so in order for me to be able to enact that, we need that team. And it's about choosing the right people. I'm going very slow, investing my own money, generating revenue. We could definitely move faster with more people for sure. But it is about getting the right people, the right partners, and working on the right campaigns to drive results. And that's going to take time. But yeah, we're in a good place.
It is all about people.
Yeah.
I think I might have said this before, but the longer I go on this journey, the more I realise that your team are people, your customers are people, your shareholders are people.
Yeah.
You know, so if you don't understand people, that's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And two is finding the right people is also a challenge.
Yeah.
And because I think the thing that I've found is there are lots of smart people out there, without a doubt. But finding people that align with your culture and values and the things that you expect as someone running a business is really, really tough.
It is, yeah.
You know, and we've learned a lot of lessons from the last 2, 3, 4 years around that. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is around setting those expectations quite aggressively early on. You know, and that's a mistake that I've made without a doubt.
But you own it though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think now going forward, you know, we've got a brilliant team now. Talent density is really high. And I think that going forward, it would be about setting those expectations more aggressively to people we bring in to say, hey, this is going to be really uncomfortable. It's going to be hard work. Yeah. We're going to ask you to do things outside of your job spec. Sometimes you're going to have to work late. Yeah. And it's going to be really hard, but
it's fun.
It's going to be fun and it's going to be rewarding and we're going to make an impact.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think I've definitely learned.
A lot of people don't do that though. A lot of people kind of like under prepare their team for the realities of that. I've experienced that. I've spoken to people who have also experienced that as well. So I respect that approach for sure.
And actually I think it's also easier to do that because again, from the learnings that I've had personally, is if you don't do that, you're then catching it up.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I didn't set that expectation well enough at the start. But by the way, this is actually how it's going to be. Yeah. Oh, shit, I've already hired you. Yeah. Oh, dear, we're in a sticky position. But so yeah, definitely learnings. I think that's important. One thing I wanted to touch on, which we mentioned earlier on in the conversation, is the wash of content that there now is due to lots of AI content creation tools. And so I'm really interested in, and you've touched on this, but I really want to sort of get some clarity for the audience around what is going to set someone apart when they're creating content on Halo and Echo versus going to Claude or the tons of other tools that are out there that allow artists to create video or visual content. What is it you think that you're doubling down on that allows them to create something that is unique and will cut through and is of the quality that they would expect? So that's the sort of, what allows you, do you think, to create something that is going to be different to that? Yeah.
So to set expectations, my platform doesn't create the content.
Okay.
So what my platform does is when you upload the video to the platform, it has the eye of a creative director built off of winning campaigns and really bad campaigns. Over the 15 years I've been doing it, I've got proprietary data as well. So that's like my moat. And it's not just a tick box exercise. So what AI will do is if you have a video and you're trying to create content and you're coming up with ideas, you type in, I want to create a video for this brand, or I'm working on this, what do you think? It'll come up with an idea that has worked for someone over and over and over again. So what happens is that creativity space just condenses and it's just the same thing over and over and over again. But what makes you different? What makes you unique? I come from West London. I have Ghanaian roots. There's a story there. Whereas if I was to type it into ChatGPT, it would just give me a really generic story that I should tell. So I'm looking at the data. I'm looking at how you're telling the story. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at what's worked in the past. I'm looking at your competitors. And if you were to do that, you would need a whole company of creative agencies, strategists, you would need media, you need video editors, you would need all of that. And the problem with our industry is media, creative, brand are all siloed. So even if you were to hire those people, you don't have the people who have done everything. And I also have that insider information, which I can't share legally, but I can shape your campaign based on my knowledge and my learnings that most people don't have. I was the only person within the company to hold the role I did at a regional level and also at a global level. Most people wouldn't leave and share that knowledge and expertise. So like use that tool, use the platform, use the knowledge that I have. I am B2B and I do work with mid-tier companies and enterprise companies. But that will affect the artists that they're working with, or the campaigns that brands work with. So what makes me different? The expertise, the passion, the knowledge, everything I've said. But I also have that proprietary knowledge and I built it into the tool.
Great.
Yeah.
I love that. One question that I always end on two questions, but I'm going to change one of them slightly.
Okay.
One of them that I usually ask is, if you were to start again today, what would you do differently? But your company's quite fresh and new, so actually let me tweak it slightly and say, when you were back in the YouTube days, what was the one thing that you would recommend to people that really was like a powerful, steadfast recommendation that would help them?
Yeah.
And how is that different today? You know, is there one thing that you used to tell people that actually now doesn't make sense, but this thing does, and it's an iteration upon that first thing?
I'm going to get in trouble for this.
Sorry.
I will answer the company question first. So
okay.
What would I do differently? Because I've been doing it for 2 years, but I've had a company before which I've spun out into this. Delegate as fast as possible and work with people. I learned that at YouTube. I learned it before YouTube, but that's how I would run things. But in terms of what was I telling people back then, I'm not there now, so I can say it. You have to remember that any platform, when they're sharing advice, they're built on scale. There is no way that you can understand this. There's no one size fits all approach. And so when I would work with clients, they would know that, but we would have thought leadership that we would share. So you can go on any platform and say, how do I make the best videos? You have to manage your expectations. They're not going to tell you how you can make the best videos. They're going to share what has worked for like Gen Pop, that most brands that have come out. So I would start with that. I think that's something that I didn't start with. I was like, okay, here's the best thought leadership. Let's see how we can apply it to your business. Now it's like, this is a thought leadership. It'll get you from A to B, but it won't get you to Z. So now we need to work with you more closely to figure out what's going to work for you, as opposed to kind of just one size fits all approach. So that's what I would change. I would change that one size fits all approach way of thinking of, this is how this platform is saying we should create content, and say, start with that, then find your voice and then make a playbook based on your voice, not on what a platform is telling you what to do. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And it got me thinking about, and maybe you can't talk about this, and maybe we talk about this from a Spotify perspective or something like that. Okay. And we can always edit it out. But it gets me thinking about the different goals that, you know, the platform has its own incentive and it wants to grow the business, it wants more content. The artist has its own incentive, it wants to find an audience and actually you could argue it wants to take that audience off the platform into first party data or into an email list. And it's like, if you are taking the recommendations, and there are some great resources out there for the streaming and social platforms, if you're taking those in and acting upon best practice, there's that thing that goes on in my head where it's like, well, okay, is this best practice for me as an artist, or is this best practice for you at said platform, you know, which actually wants to just drive engagement and make it really sticky so I can sell more advertising space? You know, how do you think about those two?
I mean, I love the fact that you touched on like email and first party data. That's the whole goal. Your goal is to use this platform that has so many users to get in front of them, and then you need to convert that off that platform. And I think that part a lot of brands are not thinking about. These platforms, any platform, it's an advertising business. They are selling ads. That's the goal, or they're selling subscription, SVOD or AVOD. That's what they do. They're not here strictly for the people who are creating the content, but they work in partnership with them. Without these platforms, we wouldn't be able to get our music or our content out or promote our business. So it's give and take. Yeah. So you have to use these platforms the way they will use you. So I would do exactly that. Like there's an artist called Russ that I learned about like 10 years ago. He was uploading, I think he said a song a day. And correct me if I'm wrong, a song a day. And I was just like, he's gamed the system. He knows exactly what's going on. I was like, how is he doing that? But the thing about it is, if you're a content creator or a brand and you're like, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm a business, I can't do that. You're not going to grow because the platform is telling you, hey, this is how we work. Try and do this. But once you've got that audience, keep them. So Ryan Leslie, he was at a talk and I was able to be in the audience and pick his brain. He has this platform where he was able to convert artists through mobile. He has like a platform where he gets their mobile number. Very simple. He's thinking about first-party data. He's still using these platforms, but he's using it to convert them off the platform. How do you do that? That's where the HypeMuse, that's where I come into play, or your creative team comes into play. But that's the end goal. Your end goal is to get them off so that you have that data for you. But to supercharge that, you need these platforms. So use them the way they use you. Yeah.
And the audience.
And the audience.
You know, and you talked about this before, I think, it's like your social media audience is your rented audience.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll notice this from engagement rates. You know, if you look at a social media engagement rate, what proportion of your audience are you reaching each time you post? 5%, 10%?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know? And you've done all the hard work to build 100% of that audience, but yet you're only reaching 10% of it each time. Yeah. Unless you spend some money, you know, and so...
Or, and that or, come and find me, or you are providing value. Like if you are a content creator and people are coming to the platform because of you, you're going to see some changes there. Yeah. You know, you're showing the platform that you're uploading, you're being loyal to the platform, people are going to keep on coming. So it really comes down to the creative storytelling and that audience connection piece that we talked about. You need to have that connection, otherwise it's not going to work.
Yeah. And the value exchange is important in a number of ways, right? Is that we see this all the time where artists are pre-release, they want some pre-saves, so they ask their fans to pre-save their track, right? But actually, okay, I could pre-save a track, but if you are going to ask me to do that, what am I getting in return? Yeah. You know, okay, I can listen to it on release day. Well, anyone can. But like, where's the delighter? You know, where's the thing that's going to bring me in and go, I'm definitely going to pre-save this. Yeah. And I'm going to share it with my mates who should pre-save it too, because you've made me feel a real part of this community.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You know, so I think that's something that we always try and talk about is the value exchange, which is so important. Yeah. One final question that I love to end on is, what was there one thing when you started out, and you can take this back pre-law if you want to, MySpace days, where you set that as a milestone or a goal that would then determine or dictate somewhat that you had achieved an amount of success that you'd be somewhat satisfied with. Have you reached that goal, and has it changed if you have?
Yeah, I'll take it back to the YouTube days for sure. All I wanted was 1,000 followers. I wanted 1,000 followers so I could use a YouTube studio, and they gave you a tiny little plaque, and I was like 19 or 20 or something, and I was just like, I want that plaque. So I was hungry. I was studying. I was doing my exams, but I was like, I need that 1,000 followers. I got it. And I was like, oh, what's next? And that's the same with me today. Like, I'm always thinking about what's next, but you need to be satisfied with what value are you bringing to the world. But yeah, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to have access to a community of people who thought like me. That was why I wanted the studio. In terms of today, what I want to do is I would love to partner more with creative teams in mid-sized to enterprise companies, like I've been doing recently, to drive things forward. When I'm sitting there and I'm speaking to one or two labels right now, and I'm like, this is something that I want to do, or some creative agencies outside of the music industry, I'm just like, this is the problem. But the thing is, I can't go in there and puff out my chest and say I know what's going on. It's a partnership. And so the most important thing about like goals and aspirations is be flexible to change them. I set out to change the music industry, and I was like, I'm the only one who's going to do this. And I was just like, actually, I heard about Unheard because one of your partners was actually one of my mentors when I started working out. And I was like, oh, Unheard, this is amazing. And I was just like, oh, this is great. And I was like, they're doing this so well. I don't think I want to do this because I think they've covered it. I want to do this. And I was just like, I need to be flexible with my goals, and I need to see what's going on. I need to partner with amazing people, because I was just like, this goal that I have right now, it needs to change. It needs to be flexible, because the capacity that I have, I won't be able to serve the audience the way you're serving it, but I can serve my audience this way. So that's what I was thinking about. I was just like, I'm going to change the industry. And I was like, I'm not going to change the industry. The industry is the way it is for a reason. So how can I partner with amazing people to make 5% change? And that's how I operate nowadays.
Yeah. And, I think rising tide, it's a rising tide. I do believe that. So what I mean by that is, especially for those who are building businesses outside of like the major label space, and they're building tools to serve artists and managers and labels too. I think we can all go together. Yeah, like we can all make the change. Like that's something I've come to learn is, my lofty vision when I left Universal was, can I democratize access to major label marketing power? Meaning anyone can access the type of service that a major label would offer. And obviously that's not easy to do. Yeah. But what you can do is you can allow anyone anywhere to access really robust and powerful marketing tools. Yeah. And actually, if we're doing this part, which is around the advertising or the playlist pitching or the creator pitching, whatever it is, using data to reduce uncertainty, then someone else needs to work on the content side and the optimization, and someone else needs to work on the sync and the distribution. Yeah. So I think we all do this together, and we build the network that allows us to communicate and partner, and then we will achieve something.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you were talking about like the playlisting piece. I was just like, that's something that I'm not going to touch, because that's not my expertise, know? So going together and just kind of bringing all your ideas, that's how you're going to make change. Yeah. You're not going to make change trying to solve everything yourself. Yeah. And also as entrepreneurs, you have that lofty goal, like, I'm going to do this. Even with as much money in the world as you can probably get, it's probably best to kind of focus on one or two things that you're really great at and then partner with the rest. So that's what I would change. Yeah.
Focus is important. Focus is hard. I find focus really hard. Yeah. Because there's so much going on. There's an email from your accountant. There's a phone call from the lawyer. There's an artist who's happy or not happy with the product. And then you also want to focus on like the key things that are going to make the boat go faster. Yeah. So that was something I actually did for the first time. Shout out to Alex, a guy called Alex Brees, who has this network of founders, and he did some, sounds a bit wanky, but it's like executive training type thing. Okay. And I went last week, and the majority of CEOs and founders there said the one thing they want to work on is focus. So actually hearing it from others is quite nice, because you go, it's not just me who's like can't concentrate for more than 5 minutes. But there are others. I think that's something that you forget sometimes as a solo founder. Is you think like you're the only one going through this. It's really hard. It's isolating. There are others. Yeah. Who are going through exactly the same thing that you're experiencing.
And it feels so good to know that you're not the only one, but that's what makes us really. Like if we had focus, I think we would take the safe route, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a superpower when you know how to leverage it and what you need to do with that. But you definitely need people. You need people to balance out what your blind spots are. So yeah.
Definitely, because I am bad at a lot of things as well. Just to say, there are a lot of things I'm not very good at, that Sam is good at, or Danny's good at, or Bo's good at, or some of the team. So it's important to have those people around you. Kay, thank you.
Of course, thank you for having me.
That's okay. And if you are an artist or a label or a creative agency, creative team, looking to sort of get that dissection of your content, understand what you can tweak, what you can iterate upon to create something that's going to catch people. This is where they go.
There we go.
Halo and Echo.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Amazing.